Hello and welcome back for another VMK in the Caligari series. In this VMK I'm going to show you how to continue working inside TrueSpace. This time we're going to go into a little bit more detail in terms of modeling. In the previous VMK we just worked with the primitive shapes that are included in TrueSpace. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take those primitive shapes and we're going to start editing them. We're going to add extra pieces to these shapes and start pulling them apart to deform them into a shape that we're trying to create. The method that I'm going to show you for modeling involves taking a primitive shape and then pulling the faces that are on that shape to give us new geometry. So we'll continually keep pulling at our primitives to give us the final shape that we want. This is a very easy way to model and it's very quick to learn as well. So let's get started. Okay, so here we are in TrueSpace. And we'll just start off with a simple cube. I'll just put it in the scene. One thing that I forgot to mention last time is the pivot point. Now let's just quickly talk about the pivot point. I'm going to place this cube at 0, 0, and then 1, just so that its center point is 1 unit located above the ground here. So the center point about the cube is considered the pivot point. That's the point that we rotate about whenever we use any of these controls. You notice as I'm rotating the cube, it's rotating about that center point. Well, I can move the pivot point to any location I like. To do that, you'll go down into the toolbar here and there's a button labeled Axis. When you click on that, what happens is the axis shows up on the screen. Now, it's right now in the center of the cube, so you can't see it. But if you have our tools turned on to move objects, like we do right now, if I click and drag, you'll notice that I can move that axis anywhere that I like. Let's say I'll put it down here. Now we click on the axis one more time, and we go back into our object view, rather than our axis edit view. Now, when we rotate the cube, notice that it's rotating about that new location that we just placed that axis on. So this is very helpful whenever you want to rotate about a specific axis or a specific position on the geometry. What you should do is select this axis to see it, then you can move it around wherever you like, click it again, and now you've moved it so you'll rotate it about a new location. It's a very important concept to know. Just be aware it's located right here. If you ever do need to reset it, you can use these buttons located up here. Let's see. We'll turn on the pivot point again, and you can move axis to the center of the object. If you just click this button, it returns it back to the very center, so you can't see it again because it's located in the center. We can normalize the location, which basically means put it at 0, 0, 0 in the world space. And we can also normalize the rotation, so if you do rotate the axis so it's off angle, you could normalize the angles, and you can also normalize the scale. So if you do scale the pivot point, you can scale it back down to the original size. So that's how you use those buttons there. Okay, let's just delete this cube and start fresh. Alright, so here's our cube. Now I wanted to show you some modeling techniques. Well, what we're going to do here is just frame up on our cube, zoom in a little bit, and let's rotate around to some nice angle like so. Okay. The method that I'm going to show you to model is very simple to do, and is very easy to learn as well. First thing you do is you right-click on your object. As soon as you do that, you go into Point Edit mode. So you're no longer manipulating the object on a global scale. You're not changing the entire size of the cube. Now what you can do is change individual faces, individual vertices, or individual edges of this cube that we have right here. Now, by default, you'll notice there's this new toolbar that appears. Your toolbar may not be expanded, so all you need to do is just hit that little bar here, and this is the default setting. You can just expand it out so that all the buttons are visible. We'll leave it visible so that you can get comfortable with where the buttons are located that you need to use. Alright, by default, the context edit mode is selected. What this means is when you use your cursor to highlight over top of the cube, Either a face will appear like so, so you notice that all 4 edges are highlighted. If you highlight over top of an edge, just that edge gets selected, so you can see it's just this one here. If you move close to a vertex, then only that vertex point is highlighted. To make an actual selection, you just click the mouse button, and then you'll notice that a green selection appears on the screen showing that I've now selected that face. Because I've selected the face, all 4 edges are highlighted, as well as all 4 vertices. You can do this for any face you like so. You can do this for any edge. When you select an edge, you get the 2 vertices on the end, plus the entire edge. And if you just select a vertex, then you'll just get the 1 point that you select, like so. Now, why do you want to do this? Well, it's very easy to go in here, select the face. Now, if we wanted to move this face, what we need to do is select this tool over here. This is the Move Point tool. And because we have the entire face selected, as soon as we move it, this whole face will move. So we're going to go into this top view here. I'm just going to use the left mouse button, click and drag downward. And notice that I'm pulling that face downward. I'm basically manipulating the cube now, changing its sort of skew, you could say, to give it a different kind of shape, like so. And then if I go into, let's say, the side view here, then we can move it up and down, or in the front view, like so. I like to move along major axes. That's why I'm always clicking in either this one, or this window here. I don't like manipulating things in the perspective view, because as soon as you click and drag in the perspective view, everything is with respect to the current camera angle. So if I change this camera angle like so, and then I start clicking and dragging, things will start skewing not proportional to a specific major axis. So this is very hard to control faces this way. It's much easier to control them using our orthogonal views like so. You do have the constraints, which I talked a little bit about earlier. Those are located here. By default, all of them are turned on, which means I'm not constraining to any of the axes. If I go and use my hotkeys, I can turn them all off and only turn on the one that I would like to use. So for instance, if I turn on the x-axis, now when I click and drag, I'm only allowed to move along the x-axis. Every other axis is constrained for me. Just be aware that these constraints are with respect to the face that we've selected. Alright, I'm going to turn them all on now so that it's easier to manipulate and I have no restrictions. Now, when modeling, the most important tool that you should be familiar with is this tool right here. It's called Sweep in TrueSpace. When you click the Sweep tool, you notice that the face that was currently selected gets moved outward by 1 unit, and it gives me a new block. And you now notice that that face is completely attached to where it was before, but our cube now has this extra piece attached to it. Let's try that again. Using the Context Selection tool, I just selected it here. I'll select this face up here. Now using the Sweep tool, you notice that I bring out another section. So you can continue doing this as much as you like to give your geometry whatever shape you really want. So let's just quickly go in here, give it some bumps sticking out of all sides. I'm not really making anything specific, but I just want you to become familiar with how these tools work. There we go, we just created a cube with these little pieces sticking out of it. Now what we can do is, again, you can go in here at any point in time and now manipulate these faces at will. You have the ability to move. You notice here that I have the Move Selection tool turned on, so when I click and drag inside any of these regions, then I'm moving that face. I can also scale the face using this button here. So now when I'm actually skewing a little bit. So if I move outward and like so, I'm actually enlarging that face, as you can see on the screen. And then again, if I use the Sweep tool, it's just going to make another copy and sweep it outward by 1 unit. Now you're not restricted to having this always sweep 1 unit. As a matter of fact, after you do 1 sweep, you can change the shape of the result. So for instance, let's go in here and just shrink it down a little, maybe this way, and shrink it down this way. And just for effect, I will also rotate it slightly, like so. Now when I hit the sweep tool a second time, those changes that I made are recorded, and they're copied over to the next sweep. So you notice it's getting smaller and smaller, and it's also rotating further and further as I'm clicking and moving everything around here. Let's just zoom in over here a little and do a couple more sweeps. Okay? So that's basically the sweep tool. It's a very powerful tool, and you can basically pull any of your faces outward to give shapes for the geometry you're trying to create. After you're done, just press the spacebar to return back to the object edit view rather than the point edit view. Once you're in the object view, you can go in and manipulate the entire object rather than do it face by face. So I can go and scale the whole thing down or rotate the whole thing rather than just manipulating one face at a time. Let's go and delete that and start off with another simple demonstration here. We're going to start off with a cylinder, but this time I'm going to reduce the number of sides of this cylinder slightly. So I'm just going to use my right mouse button, click and drag. Let's say I'll make this, what is it, a five-sided cylinder. And let's see here. No, I don't want that one. No, I didn't want that one. There we go. Just shrink it down slightly like so. Okay, after pressing the space bar, we now have our five-sided cylinder, which really doesn't look like a cylinder anymore. I'm going to go into edit mode, select the top face, and extrude it upward. And this time, right now it's been only extruded 1 unit upward. I want to actually extrude it far further than 1. So let's do 5 units upward, like so. So now I've basically pulled that top face upward 5 units. Or actually not 5 units, but I've placed it at the coordinate 5 in the z-axis here. Now, if we go back into context edit, let's make some selections here. I want to select all the faces around the bottom edge here. You have a couple selection tools located here. You have the paint selection tool, which lets you basically use your paint tool so that as you click and hold, you're going to make selections like so. You can use a marquee selection like so. So you just marquee select, and it's going to make a selection for all the faces that are within that marquee. And you also have a freehand marquee selection. So as I sort of draw around like so, when you close the loop, it's going to select everything inside. Notice it's only selecting things that are on the front face of my object. It didn't select these guys here at the back. To do that, what you need to do is hold the control key and then continue making selections. So here we go. I'm going to do marquee select, add those 2 faces into the selection, and then hold control down the last time and marquee select that last face. So now I've selected all the 5 faces located around the outside of that shape. Okay, so that's how you make multiple selections. Now, let's go back into point edit mode here. Let's select this one face here. With this one face selected, I want to show you another helpful tool, and this is a tip tool. What this does is very similar to the sweep tool. However, after it sweeps, it takes the 4 vertices that make up the face, or however many there are, and joins them all together to a tip. So let's zoom in here on this face. Right now I have 4 points selected because I have one entire face selected. If I hit the sweep tool, you notice I get 4 new points and a new section that's joined onto the old one. However, if I hit the point, a new point is created, which is 1 unit offset from the previous ones, but all those faces, all those vertices have now been joined to one location, like so. So you can make very sharp points this way. And also notice that the point is selected after you use this tool. So you can go in here and modify how far this point is located. Maybe I want it really far away, like so. Or you can just go in here and change it to wherever you like. Okay, there's one more, well actually 2 more tools that are very helpful with the sweep tool to use in unison. Let's go and just delete that cube, or I guess it was a cylinder, and start off with a cube one more time. This time I'm going to start off with a very flat cube, something like so. Now let's say we wanted to create a very crude chair. I'm just going to take this guy, maybe shift it up slightly like so. I'm going to build this chair very quickly using the sweep tool. What we can do here is just starting off at the bottom face like so. I select the bottom face. There's a tool here to do quad divide. As soon as you hit this button, you quad divide your existing face into 4 new faces like so. And then you could use these ones to however you like. So I'm going to select this face here, and I'm going to go and extrude it. And at the same time, I'm also going to shrink it down in X and Y. So not the Z direction, just X and Y, like so. And I'm going to shift it down in the Z axis now by, let's see here. Oh, I should do this in orthogonal view because I get a little bit more control. So looking down here, I'm just trying to line up the edge like so, and then going into this view here, I can see that I'm a little bit off, so I'm just going to slide it over like so, and you can see that I've sort of made a leg that's pointed off to the side. Okay, now we can repeat this process by selecting the next guy. So we'll select this face here, and we'll extrude it again, scale it, and we'll just shift it downward like so. It's still a little bit wide, so we'll go in here, just change it roughly. I'm just doing this freehand, so just bear with me. And then off to the side here, just going to locate it somewhere over here. Okay, so we have sort of 2 legs, really sort of blocky looking legs. And what else can we do here? Well, let's say we wanted to add a seat section to the top here. Let's go and give it some thickness, and then we can move this down. Oh, I'm using the perspective here. I shouldn't be doing that. Let's do it here in the side view. So correct this guy here, and just shrink it all down in size here. Something like so, maybe. Okay, so there's a little seat portion, and let's see here. Maybe we want to add some, let's say that these are the 2 front legs. Let's add one sort of clunky big leg to the back. How do we do that? Well, again, we need to select some faces here. Hold down Control to make multiple face selections. Go in and extrude those down. And let's just play around with the size. Like so. And let's give this chair some armrests. We can do that with another sweep here. We'll just select the one outer point, hold down Control and select the one on the other side. Now when we sweep, we do both at the same time. Let's select just one of these faces at first. So working with this one over here, we're gonna let's move it in a little because I don't like how far it's out. And let's select the top face here. And then let's do one extrude upward. And how should we make this look? It definitely helps to have an image in your head of what you're trying to model, because then when you actually go and model this thing, it's much easier to figure out, okay, how is everything supposed to look? I'm just doing this right off the top of my head. I have no real plan, so that's why I'm sort of struggling with, well, what should I do next? Just expand this guy, maybe like so. Bring him down. Make sure you are looking in all different perspectives at the same time so you can see what's going on to your model. Just bring this down, way down here, and just do another extrusion maybe. That's a little bit offset there. So we got a very crude armrest. If we go out into here, you can sort of see it. We have a pad, we have a blocky armrest with a place to rest your arm, and we can repeat the process for the other side. I'm not even going to bother because this chair is not looking all that great, but I just want you to get the general idea of how these tools are working. So in this view we can shift it in. I'll just leave that armrest completely off, but I will show how to go ahead and make something for the back. Again, sweeping outward, we can use our side view here and select the top face and sweep it upward as well. Let's put it real far back, something like so. And you're starting to get an idea of what the chair is going to look like. So again, to get the proper proportions, it would definitely help if you had an image of what it is you wanted to draw, because then when you're pulling these faces apart, you can have something to refer to, and that's basically using image planes. Now there's one other tool that I wanted to show you in this video. So let's just delete that chair and start off with another cube. Alright, so here's a cube, and let's right click to bring it into our edit mode, and let me show you this here. Let's say we wanted to extrude a section out of this face here, but we didn't want it to be the entire size of this face. You'll notice that when I select this face and I hit the sweep tool, it brings out that entire face, but it's completely flush with the previous one that I selected. But let's say I wanted this face to be slightly smaller. Let's say I wanted it to be something like so. But I didn't want my edges to be tapered. Instead, maybe I wanted it sort of like this, but then extruded. Well, how do I make sure that this face is perfectly in line with the original one? That's actually very easy to do, and I'll show you how to do it here with the top face. Let's select the top face. And there's a tool here, Polygon Bevel. If I click on this button here and highlight over top of any of my faces, you notice that a square appears. And this square is the new face that I'm going to create as soon as I click the button. So if I click in on the top face here, maybe right there, I just created a new face that's exactly flush with the original face. Now when I hit the sweep, you notice that I get a smaller square coming out of the original one. So that tool is very powerful to give us a smaller face that's mounted on top of an existing face. So you can do this like so, or then we can go in and make another sweep, and let's say we wanted this one to be larger, so we'll go in here and scale this guy up, move this guy down, and then, oh, that was only in the one axis, so let's do that also here in this other axis, maybe like so. And now we can extrude upward. Let's bring this up and shrink the size of this guy. Again, if you're going for accuracy, you do have the ability to type in your numerical values for whatever you want, and you can get everything lined up perfectly. But right now I'm just working in freehand mode here, so my boxes are not very square, but you get the general idea. Okay, so that's basically how you go in and model an object using sweep to bring out faces, points to bring those faces to one location. You have this tool here, which is the polygon bevel, to give you a new face on an existing face, and you have these tools here to select, to make selections, and these tools here to specify what it is you wanted to select. So go on in and play around with the editing tools here for the polygons and see what else these other tools do. There are some very powerful tools in here, but also be aware that if you start making your geometries very complex and very dense, your game engine is going to suffer, because every time you make a new face, the game engine is going to have to calculate its position in 3D space and then render it. So for games, make sure that your objects that you're creating are not overly detailed. The details will come in after you start texturing and painting them. You can fake detail by applying a texture onto a square to make it look bumpy or make it look like it has a lot more detail onto it than it actually does, when in reality all it is really a box. So just remember that when creating objects for games, you want to keep your underlying geometries very simple and add the detail in as texture.